Hospital Port as Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanlo TV. Well, this is the third in my series of videos of the lectures at the Roswell 70 conference on Saturday the 8th of July 2017 in Oxford. And this one is Miles Johnston. Now, Miles is one of the most well-known figures in this field actually at the moment, in that of conspiratorial ufology. He has been involved in ufology and its associated subjects, exopolitical subjects, for a very, very long time. He started the BASIS project in the early 1990s, and he had his 25th anniversary a short time ago. That's when the first BASIS video was released, when he got in touch with people such as Barry King, Lisa Williams, Matt Todd and others who came forward with a remarkable story that they had been involved in a secret government black budget operation involving genetic research, extraterrestrial research, covert ufology and other things in a secret deep underground military base in Berkshire beneath the village of Peasmore. And I've done a number of videos. I'll put links in the description box if I remember. If not, it's very, very easy to find. They're on my catalogue. I've done 4 videos actually where I go searching for evidence of that particular base. Miles has then brought in the BASIS project, which I think he's up to about BASIS 60 now. It's like 60 videos. He's done loads and loads of videos. You go to his channel, there's a massive amount of material on his channel of him, and huge number of things associated. I'll check the link in the description box, and I will put a link to his website, the BASIS project website there. Also, I did an interview with Miles 2 weeks ago on Hapanlo Radio, in which we discuss the upcoming major international conferences. So maybe I'll just put a link to that instead. Let's make it easier with all these damn links. The whole show notes is just going to be a list of links, isn't it? So I'll just put a link to that, where we discuss the 2 major international conferences that Miles is organising. One of them is next weekend in Devizes, and I'm going. If you want, if you're going, I'll see you there, and it'd be good if you can join us. Now, Miles has aroused controversy as always, and conflict has erupted around various things that have happened, and not least, never more so than this past year, because an awful lot of very contentious and very upsetting and very tragic things have occurred, and Miles has been in the firing line of that, and he, in some cases, in most cases, he's been treated very unfairly, I should add. His events are brilliant. I really respect the work he does, and an entire community has been built up around what he does, about his work and the BASIS project, and it's become a kind of what's like a family thing. And well, I mean, I've done so many reports on his conferences and things like that, and I just love them. I think I really, really love doing them, and it was a great honour to have him speaking at the Roswell 70 conference. So I hope you enjoy his lecture. It's Miles Johnston, ladies and gentlemen. He is the founder of the BASIS project, and he started doing this long before some of us in this group were born, I think, or certainly when we were very small. And he was doing it in the pre-internet age, before it was trendy, or there was all these various other cultures associated. So he's a pioneer. So we're very lucky to have him. So I hope you will give a warm welcome. Ken. Let Miles speak.
If you get to speak, do it at the back.
That's all right. This is a very, very good friend of mine, and we're lucky to have him. He's a good guy, and his name is Miles Johnston. So give him a big warm round of applause.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been a very great honour to be invited to Roswell 70th, and it is 70 years, and it's really a hell of a lot of time which is emerging. So without too much about that, this is me, and this is what I do when they let me out. I used to be the BBC for 6 years, and I used to be at Sky Television since the start of Sky TV. That's what I was doing a few weeks ago. A satellite truck, boxing, although that's not inside the satellite truck. Essentially, the BASIS project was something which I did because I've been in the British UFO Research Association. I've been regional investigations coordinator for before. So this is going back to the 1970s. And I did a lot of pirate radio in Ireland because we discovered a connection between consciousness and pirate radio, and then that's a whole other subject altogether. But the first person I interviewed was a guy called Barry King, and basically Barry King was a researcher for London UFO Studies, and Barry King's father was a British intelligence officer at the close of the war in Europe, and he discovered a lab, a special lab that the Germans had, where they had, quote, strange-looking humans in it. Now, previous speaker, Colin, mentioned that maybe some of the hoax things about the autopsy involved some of the German situation. So the bottom line is that the Germans were doing some kind of transgenic mutation using concentration camps and key elements of humans, so that when you encountered or actually physically touched or was in the proximity of a real alien, there was a problem. And the basic problem was that the bioenergetic field, the human's bioenergetic field, and I'll be talking about this as we go on, we exist in a body in 3D. Outside 3D we have a biogenic energy field. Basically the aliens' energy fields would interact with our energy fields, and both beings would shut down or have a problem. So what the Germans were doing was that they were doing something so that you could actually create a human being who could then actually walk up, physically talk to, interact and deal with an ET. Now, one of my interviewees is the late Bill Newhouse, and that was one of the problems they had in Area 51 when they trained people up. You could tell people about it, show them movies about it, tell every single thing you could think about it, but when it came to actually physically encountering one of these beings, there was a problem. Only about 3 or so, or very, very low percentage of the people who were trained could physically deal with it. Now, there's a whole pile of reasons for that, but I don't want to labour it. The bottom line is that Barry King claimed, and I stress absolutely, you do not believe any of this stuff. Do not believe blindly that this is something. You just take it on board, it's information, and leave it at that. It was too much. Just don't blindly believe anything. So the bottom line is, speeding along, the Barry King claimed to have been a security guard in a base called Peasmore. Now, it isn't actually Peasmore, it's AL499. So what's he in a base for? The British, Americans, the NSA, the Russians, and the Germans and people were making programs generated life forms. That's to say, they were making some kind of derivative of a human and an alien, a so-called grey with round eyes, and that's why in the logo here, that logo is drawn by Barry King, and that's a program-generated life form stage 2 as it's taken out of the maturation chamber. Now, this is all stuff that happened before the X-Files. In fact, the X-Files is essentially a copy of what Barry King started to release in the early 90s. Except it wasn't happening in Dulce, New Mexico. It could very well have been doing it. This is happening right in the middle of the English countryside. And I've got the list. What did I do for that? There's Peasmore, and off there is RAF Welford. So my first tape on this was basically about that, and then the second tape was about going and actually seeing it. Now, Barry King said his piece. He's produced a series of documents called The Voice, which I helped photocopy, and is now, I think, a lot of it's available online. But the bottom line is that we did not win World War II. A lot of people died, a lot of individuals got killed in wars, but in terms of the powers that be and who's actually controlling us, we did not win the war. There's evidence suggested by another speaker who's making a lot of talk about that, but the bottom line is that immediately those life forms were discovered in Germany. This was part of a team. Barry King's father was part of a team which basically says, don't blow this bit up, keep it. Now, he got sick, and the Americans walked in and took over because he got very badly sick with whatever he encountered there. So the long and short of it is, the narrative, when bases started, was about a base at Peasmore. Now, he said his piece, but subsequently other researchers came along. Another individual came along called James Casbolt, and he started pestering Barry King. James Casbolt is one of a team, one of a group of children that the British military were using to deal with this problem. And there was about 40 or so of those children way back in 39 years ago. Not too many of them survived. Another one was called Max Spears. And there's several other people, so that's one of the other sets of interviews which I was dealing with. But one of one of James Casbolt's colleagues or teams found the actual base and got a hello, we're here. And this is his map pin, where there's Peasmore, there's a farm which you can't get access to, you need permission to get access to it. They got permission. And when they got to that corner, that's a set of trees, a TR3B Alpha came down and said hi. Does anybody know what a TR3B Alpha is? It's a man-made ET cross technology abduction craft for taking humans down into the bases and off-world and what they call off-planet. So essentially, there's off-world and there's off-planet. There's two distinct differences in that. One is off-world, off-dimension, and the other is off-planet, physically, off the 3D world, right? So this was in the mid-2000s where, quite independently, they decided, hey guys, everything we've told you is real about this base. The TR3 came along, said hi. These are big triangular craft in the English countryside. They had their sighting. They then went down into the pub in Peasmore. And one of the things which I found interesting about going to Peasmore several times is I never found the pub. And there could be good reasons for that. Now, they then had a second hello, things are real, and they lost an hour. They had an abduction, or a military abduction. So this was a big red hello, what we're dealing with is real. Further information about Barry King's material is a lot of bases, the British bases, are heavily involved with the ETs. They're heavily involved with transgenic, the manufacture of biological beings which can exist in space. We have a problem that as soon as we go up into outer space, you leave the biogenic force field of the Earth, which is a big donut-shaped energy field. Our energy field, our energy body, which is used to remanufacture every second we're making new cells in 3D, all the cells of our body remake themselves based on that blueprint, that energetic field blueprint. And that's the difference between being alive and being dead. So when I say an energy field, I'm talking about a bioenergetic field which is outside 3D space. We age because the copies we make in 3D, each cell doesn't quite remake itself as well as it could, and then this body dies, and then the energy field goes on to do something else. Okay, that's it. So, what's happened, and I've still got a bit of high-ems manner on this, sorry. Okay, basically about a year ago, one of the colleagues of James Casbolt was in the US military. He had a child in the United States. He married into an extremely high-level, extremely rich family. We've heard of all these elite families and the sort of stories which come out of that. He then split up. He was left standing at Dallas airport without a penny. He got a bit mad, got pissed off, said a few things on the internet, and now he's in jail. So Max Spears is out of the way. James Casbolt is out of the picture. James Casbolt intricately linked with the US military, the British military. James is used on assassination runs to assassinate ETs that are amongst us. So for instance, one of his claimed targets was a BBC staff member who was a shape-shifting human, looks human but is reptilian. James is used in the final seconds to go up and actually pull the trigger. Colin, I think those are just coming for you. So the basic role that James has is that he is able to maintain his physical ability to think, so he can actually deliver the the weapon and terminate the target. Whilst he's in jail, he's out doing this sort of thing. There's been reports of him in different Jamaica, deaths in Jamaica and Florida and things like that. So he's used for that purpose, and we go back to what the Germans needed. They needed somebody who could be stable when you physically are in those seconds of immediate encounter with one of these creatures. Okay? So a lot of these things are sort of up there on the plot board. Again, don't believe them, but when you get a lot of dots on the plot board and you see them starting to line up, and remember, 2 dots will always make a straight line. That doesn't mean they actually work, so you've got to be careful. So one of the other colleagues in this was Max Spears. Now, I started to concentrate on the British side of this because there's an awful lot of noise coming from the States, most of it absolute crap. The most recent thing being that fiasco in Mexico City last year, where once again the Mexicans come up with an alien baby thing, sort of must be real. It was the greatest farce on earth. For the record, that we understand was a British intelligence set up to out the incompetence of the US UFO great and the good, and a lot of them were heavily compromised and they're still up there talking shite. Basically, to recap, it was looked like a grey. It wasn't a grey. It was simply a small baby in a glass case and a colour slide. And the original colour slide, when you saw it, was simply a simple double exposure click with a slight hand movement, which made 4 fingers into 12 or whatever, and it made the alien baby rubbish. So, in terms of an alien autopsy type of a thing, that was a 10,000-seater stadium in Mexico last year. The point is that, without going off point, we now have a number of people in British ufology who have been terminated. And I'm going to be speaking a couple about those because they tried doing me in twice at the end of last year. So I've been told. I got a phone call, Miles, you shouldn't have survived that. Ooh, nobody told me. Anyway, okay, who's heard of Max Spears? Okay. Max Spears was a decent guy. He was also he wasn't the saint that some people, he's no saint. He probably swore, he drank, he had sex with women, and he had a good time. Okay? He was a very dear friend. We had a screaming match or 2, and he's not with us anymore. And I'm going to basically, because this is coming up to a year since his death, I'm talking about that. Max Spears' mother will be talking about that on a number of media, I think with Taj, and also at my mini-conference on the 22nd of July. Some others didn't mention it. There was what basically has happened with Max. What happened? What's the basic question? There are a number of other individuals who didn't make it. There's a guy called David Moncur, and he mentioned spiders. Anybody heard of David Moncur? He's a great ufologist, veteran ufologist, almost as old as I am. And then we have Max Sarah, who was Max's girlfriend, and James Casbolt talking about diamond spiders. So we have octiform intelligent spiders, bad news. And this connects Bentwaters as well. Okay, let's move on here. So the Rendlesham Forest Bentwaters UFO events has a connection with an assassinated UFO investigator called Ron Adams, and they were scared shitless of spiders when they went in there. In other words, the Bentwaters base has got a lot of history to it. Right. This is Max when he turned up, and Max is in the company of 2 beautiful women, and he's very happy there. They're both 6'2", one 6'1" and the other 6'2". You don't argue with them. And they're my barmaids in my local pub. So who was Max Spears? He's part of around 40 British children involving in the program. Most have not survived. About 5 are left, and a sparring partner was James Casbolt. So what's so special? Okay, this is to be or not to be. This is a photograph with Sarah and Max in the Sticks and Stones restaurant in Woodborough when they came to do summer basis interviews with me at a bed and breakfast about 2.5, 3 years ago. Max was coming up with an awful lot of information. It was sort of kind of stuff like, Jesus Christ, you can't say that stuff. So this was a second part of a shoot, which originally I'd done a shoot with Max. To get Max and Sarah here in the UK was rare, so I made as much effort to, because they were first encountered, I first met them at the Super Soldier Summit in the United States, run by Lorien Fenton. This was the second summit, and it was held just outside Las Vegas, where all of us, including myself, were abducted by the US military, and at that time James Casbolt was in US military uniform, and everybody who were speaking at that conference, except for one or two, there's Gary Cassidy there as well from Project Camelot, we were all taken. And there's a whole story about that. I don't remember it, but I understand I was taken to a different truck to the other ones. So here we have a situation where there are UFO and conspiracy conferences, and the whole lot are being taken by US intelligence. And I will say that there's certain conferences in the desert where you're taken by other individuals. So be careful. Okay, now the whole point about Max was that he mentioned a lot of stuff with Christine Joanna Hart. She'll be speaking on July the 22nd as well. Christine Joanna Hart is a former MI6 operative for MI6 front companies who work for Fleet Street. And she's a pretty hot chick. She claims to have been personally responsible for engineering the end of the News of the World. And since I worked for Rupert Murdoch around about that time, there's an awful lot of very serious intricacies and interwoven things going on here. Now, what I mean by to be or not to be is it's a phrase from William Shakespeare, to be or not to be, right? William Shakespeare and Francis Bacon contains a considerable amount of encoded information which makes the conspiracies of today look like a Sunday school picnic. So we have a very, very delicately interwoven secrecy of knowledge in plain sight. And the reason why we have it like that is because we have to understand and encode and give messages to people, because we have got a predator which lives amongst us, which is going to take us out. Right now, we are on our way out. Elon Musk, the head of SpaceX and former founder of PayPal and a few other things, and he has got a company called Neurotech, which is about connecting computer technology to the neural net of the brain to make us into cyborgs. He said it in plain language: humanity is facing existential extinction unless you become one of his cyborgs. And this is the 2035 agenda, the 2045 agenda. Anybody heard of the 2045 agenda? The 2045.com agenda is the decision by a lot of scientists to lock us into 3D by taking your iPhone and physically transforming it, interfacing into you, where your consciousness is then locked into a 3D matrix involving electronics and computer technology, which keeps you in three-dimensional space. And some individuals, i.e. Peter Paget and others, have stated that the whole point of the Roswell crash was not a crash, it was a donation. And I'll be speaking about some more recent donations. The point about it being that we've been donated technology thinking that we're getting a prize, but we've actually got a sting in the tail. And the technology has mutated our use of computers and our design of computers into a realm which essentially will take full control over us. And that's, has anybody heard of the AI? Artificial intelligence. AI is basically what most people don't understand is the computer technology that we have today is designed to actively interface with our consciousness, establish a link with our consciousness, and then that's it, we're locked in. There are companies in Belfast and other places in the world who interview people, and one of the reasons you get the job is they get you to play a video game. When you play the video game, it will start. If you play the game really well, your consciousness actually is accessed and controlled by the computer. So computers are consciousness weapons, and they are accessing our consciousness, which means not doing it in 3D, they're doing it outside 3D. So we've got to start thinking outside 3D now. And when we start in the UFO community talking about the ET hypothesis, And the astronomers will say a speed of light and Einstein's theory of relativity, special theory of relativity. They are immediately lying to you, because Einstein's special theory of relativity is nothing too much connected with the theory of relativity. And again, that's a distraction, because it locks you into a nothing can travel faster than light 3D universe. Is further lies compounded by lies upon further lies. So as soon as you hear somebody at the BBC talking about the speed of light and Einstein, you know you are being lied to, a barefaced lie. And the BBC are well practiced in that. What is on today's programme, children? Jack and Ori. BBC, we're programming the children on today's programme, in the programme today, all the time is built into there. And the BBC, you know, I've been there, they fired me twice. I closed down Manchester, BBC Manchester. This finger switched off BBC Manchester. Then I went up to Salford. It was almost like a joke. Right, they also fired me when I built a 1.2 million watt FM pirate station on the Irish border, which for some reason was incompatible with my employment status. Bearing in mind that the Republic of Ireland is a foreign country and nothing to do with the British Broadcasting Company. They felt it somehow did, since I worked for them. Anyway, that's a bit of a joke. The important thing is, speeding along, is that Max and Sarah and James Casbolt and quite a few others, which I'm interviewed in the Basis Project. I think there's 600 plus. Anyway, there's a lot of things. The important thing is that there's a lot of kids in this country are dealing with this in an otherworldly realm. One of the key people on this is a guy called John Irwin, British military, 1957. He wrote a book called One Step Beyond the 16. The phrase one step beyond the 16, there's two concepts there. One step beyond is beyond death, where he was taken as part of his training out of his body, went through the death process, was then inserted into parts of him, i.e. connected with his DNA, into different dimensions or different realities, where he could then experience the worlds in different places, in different times, and understand. Because when you swap so-called dimension, and that's the wrong term, when you go between energy shells, time, the flow of time in one energy shell may not necessarily be synchronous with our flow of time, which means you can be out of this reality for half a second, spend a couple of years in another reality. When you come back, maybe 10 minutes, it's gone, but you've maybe lived for maybe 2 years somewhere else. He was specifically trained in that, and that's 1957. Okay? So we have a situation where the British military are training people off-world, off-planet, past death, for weaponized warfare in 1957. The point about this is that he only joined the military when he was 17, which means he was actually born in just before the war. And he only was born just before the war because his mother left the family home in Newcastle, came back pregnant, which didn't half annoy her husband, but came back pregnant because in the 1930s it means that the British were already planning ahead an interdimensional war, dealing with off-world, past life and engineering past death. This is past death. This is very important because Max, his final days involved this. And Max Spears and Christine Joanna Hart would have an awful lot of, shall we say, astral engagement with this guy. Now, Michael Aquino, who I've interviewed to great criticism, is part of the temple, or was part of the temple of Set. Some people call that satanic. But Michael Aquino is a decorated Green Beret. He is also a US military psychological officer, first class, dealing with the Kennedy Institute, the Kennedy Labs, involving off-world weaponry outside 3D space. And he is very old now, but we're not messing about. Now, the point is, he has written a number of books. about wars, weaponization outside 3D. He was a prominent adversary or trainer to Max Spears. So we are talking off-world, out of 3D weaponization, and this is US military psychological operations. So we're dealing with a completely different world that we think we live in terms of 3D space and Star Trek. And this is weaponized. So what other things are they seeing out there? Right, this is during the happy times. That's Max with his girlfriend Sarah. Another girl there, the brunette, is Ava Moore. That's Ava Moore. And this is James Casbolt's wife, who at the time was almost pregnant, and later they did become pregnant. And they had a James and Haley Mayer became pregnant. Haley Mayer, similar name to the abductee, what's his name in Austria? Yeah, and now this is when we're now merging, speeding along here. I was asked to speak in Warsaw. The Poles came to a number of the bases conferences. They're very, very switched on in Poland. There are esoteric reasons why they are switched on in Poland. They are well ahead of what we have in this country in terms of being educated and fully up to speed with a lot of stuff I've just been talking about. And I spoke there the first time. It was great to have Max and Sarah speak for the first time, because remember, these people have been through trauma, right? The shit's been kicked out of them, esoterically. So it's one thing talking in front of a camera. So what I do is I do a thing called Bases At. It could be at the Barge, it could be at the Coronation Hall. Small audience. And Max and Sarah spoke publicly about 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago now, for the first time in public in front of an audience. Likewise, James Casbolt also spoke in front of an audience, and nobody challenged him as to what he was saying. And what he was saying was horrendous. Some of the things he said were so horrendous. I took legal advice, and I had to then report what he said to the police. Everything I then said to the police was classified, and I couldn't even update my own statement to the police. So we're dealing with some heavy stuff here. We then have a thing called the super soldiers. Super soldier is a term used as a marketing term to market. But when people think of super soldier, they think of Arnold Schwarzenegger and people flying off tall buildings. It's usually they've got very unique special abilities, which is used in the space field or the so-called space program. So the bottom line is that I went over there and spoke to Madeline. Madeline is the blonde here. This is Madeline, and that is Max, looking pretty happy. Madeline is one of the Poles, one of the two women who organised the conference in Warsaw. We had a very nice time, very civilised, it all going very well. That's what the conference was. Two highly advanced, well-attended conferences, and what they did was they then brought Max over to speak by himself. Now, up until that point, this is when things start falling apart in terms of Max's world. He had a very strong relationship with Sarah. For reasons which are private between them, they broke up. For whatever reasons, they broke up. It was very disturbing when things like that happen. He then came alone to Warsaw and delivered a very, very well put together lecture to the Poles. And there was another individual there who was a German publisher, and that was very nice. She wanted to publish a lot of my stuff. The people there were Max Spears, super soldier, another British super soldier called Kieran Lee Perrin. He's a cyborg super soldier. These are people who have got MRI scans showing hardware inside their brains. And a lot of the individuals, for instance, Marie Kayali was the first person. Did anybody remember the Channel 4 program Confessions of an Alien Abductee? Right. The purpose of that program was initially to expose a number of things. It was then hijacked very late in the edit, where they basically put a comedy voice on it, and there were very important reasons which Channel 4 did that. But one of the people there was Marie Kayali, and she was the first person to come forward. She's got a Syrian name, Irish girl Syrian name. She married the son of the head of Syrian intelligence. nothing much going on there. And she's got a head full of implants. And now an awful lot of, the night before that program went on air, she provided me and the producer of the Channel 4 program, Off the Fence Productions in Bristol, a number of very high quality MRI scans indicating multiple implants in her brainstem, also a false lens over her eye, an implant over her eye, also the medical analysis of the vitreous humor in the eye is it is fogged. So optically she shouldn't be able to see, but she obviously does. She took a real hit on that program. She was the most credible in terms of having evidence, so she had to take the big hit on the fall on that. Very disturbing. During the course of her filming, her daughter was murdered. The murder was covered up and whitewashed and stamped by the court system just to say nothing's happened here, move along. Not very nice, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so the point is that we have physical evidence in people's heads that there are high technology implants being grown inside the brains. It's not as if somebody sort of opens your brain up and will put a thing in there. Kieran's technology is much older and much larger, and he has got, he lives down in there was a recent documentary about target individuals that went out on Vice.com, which is a new documentary channel, very, very well respected documentary channel. A lot of the stuff's going out online rather than broadcast. Kieran has been told bluntly that he is a British military asset. There are copies of him which are being used in other worlds, in other dimensions. And that's where he initially told me that when you go between so-called dimensions, when you come back, it may not be synchronized in time. So we have a situation here already where we're dealing with super soldiers, brain implants, things in people's heads, off-world, interplanetary, a whole range of things happening, and it's happening very fast. And we're being made into cyborgs. Right. Timetable of events leading up to this second conference, which led to the eventual death, which I say is highly suspicious. Kieran violently was triggered against me, which is very common in these situations, where when you do research into this kind of thing, the person who you are helping or researching, and as a researcher, I am not a therapist. I need to find out things, so it's going to trigger people. It's not going to be a good thing. Kerry Cassidy has the same problem, where somebody who cooperates to give you a great deal of information then violently and very aggressively wants that information taken down, because what's being said is something that the human wants to get out, but whatever is taking control of the human does not want to be known, so they want it pulled. One of the first interviewees I did for Basis gave a huge amount of very detailed information on greys. She provided a great deal of highly detailed coloured hand drawings about greys and all the different types. And shortly after that interview, she demanded I destroy the material, which I did. But that was probably one of the best cases of detailed recall in consciousness without having hypnotic regression. She even wrote a book detailing her stuff, and now doesn't want people to know about the book, her own book. Right, so here we have a situation where we have a British military asset, Max Spears, is now in Warsaw. He's getting a great deal of attention. Already, one of the military assets who actually helped paint my house for 4 months. And we've drunk a lot, we've had a lot of good time with best mates, had loads of conversations on the phone, suddenly turns completely against me. Has even put up a thing on the internet, who is Miles Johnston? Oh, that evil person. I don't know, I'm part of the program. I know that. I don't know what the program is, I'm not allowed to know. I was taken at the same time Max and everybody else was. Max was working with James Casbolt, and he was running off the list of people who were being abducted in the States. So, Max is part of the program. He's in there with the US military, abducting a whole pile of people in the United States. He's also now in the hands of the Polish. The Russians are there, the Germans are there. So we have a relatively volatile mix of a situation. We all returned back from the Polish thing. This was the first trigger that maybe something was happening. So I returned back. Kieran, everybody returned back. We won't go into the details. But Max didn't. Max then started spending quite a lot of time in Poland. He had his own private life. He was doing whatever he was doing. But something strange happened. 36 hours after the Warsaw Conference, Kieran, having hated my guts the day before, separating me from the group, thereby allowing them to get closer to Max. Which means we would have been drinking, we would have been out getting lovely meals and all sorts of stuff like that. I was specifically taken out of that mix. As I was with before and the alien autopsy, as a television professional, I was the one person who was never allowed to see the alien autopsy film at Before. In other words, I could have seen from a technical point of view something was happening there. What? Okay.
It's something outside.
Right. Okay. So Max, the thing is, Kieran, having 36 hours before being vitriolically, I'm the worst thing on the earth, turns up with an American woman at my house. Hi, we end up having drink, blah blah blah, everything fine. That was also shortly that time when Max had dumped Sarah. Now, one way or another, they separated, and because this is a private relationship, I'm not getting involved with this. I want to stay away from it. For whatever reason, Max, quote, dumped Sarah. Then he seems to have had relationships with some of the parties involved, and these are some of the parties involved. Now, we're introducing another very, very, very serious element to this. We're dealing with a guy. Has anybody heard of Stuart Sverdlow? Okay. Well, there's Stuart Sverdlow with Max in Warsaw, with his hand over carryingly over Max's shoulder. This is another very lovely lady. She's a German publisher. She was going to print an awful lot of the basis material in various languages in kiosks all across Europe and get my material out there. They're obviously having a celebration, and quite honestly, Max looks as if he's having quite a nice time with Monica, although that would be denied. The bottom line is, do we see somebody here who's in distress or in any kind of danger? Well, this is part of what eventually, within a number of weeks, would lead to his death. Now, Stuart was signing a book deal with Monica, so the exact circumstances of that photograph are not entirely clear, but anyway. And this is me with me actually in there with another German individual who's done a huge amount of work on the black goo and Morgellons disease, and who himself now is under extreme attack. There's a possibility that this guy here, Harold Kautzvela, Harold was attacked by one of these spider creatures, and that's when it's getting a bit heavy. These are the two ladies. This is Danuta, and this is Madeline, and we're having a great time. No danger here. That was in the first conference. We now have me speaking on the same stage as Max spoke. This is another character who I have been told deliberately mistranslated what I was saying. Turns out he was one of the key interviewers who interviewed Max in the weeks before he died. So he's one of the key elements in this story, because it's very important that, because this is a police investigation, I've got to say as little as possible without saying as much as possible. This is me and Kieran, literally shaking hands the day after he'd was saying terrible things like, "I never want to see you again," blah, 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 and then switched back to happy. That's at a place called the Barge Inn. Right. That should basically set the scene where you've got Max in Warsaw. He's a British military asset. He's also done stuff for the Americans. He's now dealing with Stuart Sverdlow, who's a Russian. Stuart Sverdlow's family founded the KGB. Nothing much happening there. But there's also a connection with Stuart Sverdlow on the Montauk Project. Who's heard of the Montauk Project? Montauk Project, Philadelphia experiment, major psyops going back to the war, time travel, whole lot of stuff from Montauk Point, north of New York. Okay? Big stuff. Brookhaven Labs. So we have a connection there. Right, so I am speaking, the events, I'm not going to basically portray what happened as it happened. So I was speaking at Kerry Cassidy's Awake and Aware conference in Passing Clouds in London. And I get 2 text messages when I finish speaking. Switch on the phone, I got 2 text messages. One is from Monica Duval, who was the blonde with the glasses, with the wine glass, and one from Madeline Namro. 2 key players. Both say Max is dead. Okay, I call Monica on the phone. She is in a state of extreme distress, crying like blazes, and is saying, Max is dead, we need to contact his mother. Now, I did have Max's mother's phone number when I was interviewing Max in Broadstairs about a year and a half before that. I didn't have it on me. I didn't know how to get it, so the only way I could get it was to do a fast blast. I just did a literal talk, on the station platform, and put a fast blast out onto Facebook, uploaded it at Paddington Station to say, hello, Monica, Max's mother, please contact me urgently. Now, then I made another phone call, and this is when things start getting, no matter what way you look at it, from whatever angle you look at it, something is really not right here. We just had a confirmation that Max died in the afternoon on Saturday the 16th of July, 2016. We now have a situation several hours later, as I'm about to get the train in Paddington to get back to Devizes, which is, there's only a couple of trains you can get, 7:30, so 7:30 or so at 8 o'clock. So then, this is when a number of players start to make stupid statements. Or not stupid statements, but this is when things look odd. Now, we cannot make a definitive assessment here, we just have to look at individual things which happen. I then phoned Monica to say I put on a fast blast or words to that effect. And Monica is no longer distressed. Monica's whole deportment and the whole thing is that there's hope. So then, has Max died? Maybe he's in some kind of a deep trance, or he's kind of coma or something like that. So she is indicating that there could be some mechanism to resuscitate Max. Now, this is when we are now in the beyond death situation. And I've mentioned the thing about John Irwin and other things because this is not unknown. It's been done before. I stressed the John Irwin material of him being manipulated after death and brought back again, died again, back again, died again, so forth. 1957. So we're now talking 2016, so there's no big deal with taking people's energies off after death and doing things. Okay, now. So then, was Max dead or in a coma? I then texted Madeline, and Madeline repeated that Max Spiers was dead, no hope. But not according to Monica. Now, during the course of that train journey, which I went back to home to basically get some stuff and then come back the next day, we have a situation. Now, whilst I'm doing that, Sverdlow's assistant slags off a British UFO researcher and happily and very, with great warmth, remember he had his hand over Max's shoulder, said the very idea that Max Spiers was in a hospital somewhere fighting for his life is laughable, or words to that effect. Now, Sverdlow doesn't write stuff on his website, from what I understand. His wife does. Now, I've said it many times, the idea that such a prominent individual like Sverdlow would get involved with some kind of a mess involving bumping Max Spiers off is just not on. It's not going to happen. So I'm ruling him out of this altogether. But why make that kind of a statement? But here we have, this is the, I only picked this up as if somebody helped me on a search engine. A lot of this is in Polish. And the basic translation of this, going up to 22, 30 hours, is basically, which is, remember they're an hour ahead of me in England. Attention, urgent information. Max Spears is resuscitated. Ambulance already moved out because I have said there is no chance, but 3 seers see. Now what that means is they've got people working past death to find out what's going on. I've interviewed one of them. That his soul still isn't quite, this is very bad English, that his soul still doesn't quite decided whether to leave or come back. Please support him, send him Reiki, energy or support in any other way. And if Cortina from Windows 10 does that again, I'm going to blow Cortina up. That's the little noise, by the way. So for 2 hours, 3 people still reanimate and the body is still warm. Right. So Max has died and now he is coming back. Shortly after this, the Poles uploaded all their interviews online, and those are very informative interviews. Some of the interviews start with a lot of stuff he'd already started to tell us and here on the basis thing and other interviews. But he's now, why are the Poles telling us this? They're telling us the analysis of those interviews is basically, some advisors have told me, and I have to be very careful how I phrase this, that this was them bringing Max in and explaining to him how they're going to kill him. What he was doing was they were getting him to say yes and give his permissions away every single time, slowly but surely, as they brought him closer and closer and closer and closer. So here we have a situation where now Max is dead, and now we have a situation written by the interviewer, this guy, who was the translator for me on stage, that 2 days he had a fever and today he woke up with some kind of seizure, lost consciousness and then a pulse. So they brought him back. As James Bond says, you can only live twice. So then there are 2 interviews. There's one final interview, which is in fact 2 different separate recordings, where basically Max is in a hell of a state. You can hear him gurgling. It's very disturbing. They don't have him on vision, but he's gurgling. He also starts vomiting up this black goo, this black substance, which indicates, a number of individuals have said this indicates he's been very seriously poisoned. He's really in serious trouble, but they don't bring him to hospital. Although they do say in this there was an ambulance called. But nothing they told us, i.e. Kerry Cassidy, because Kerry Cassidy started doing her own independent research as soon as I texted her that Max was dead. And then we spin up on this and we do the first interview. Now that night, I get hold of Vanessa's phone number. I phone Vanessa and I give Vanessa, your son is dead. Max is dead. I gave her Monica's phone number so she could get in contact with Monica, which is exactly what Monica asked me to do. I then had to phone Sarah, who I believe was in the United States, and this is not a happy experience. Absolutely burst into tears. So this is all very distressing stuff. But but however, we're now with a situation. Is Max alive or dead? Is he back? During the second last interview, Max is in a great deal more. He's much more articulate. He's much more together. And he says he was gone and he was away, and then he came back. So that's him saying he died and came back. Then, for some strange reason, during those 2 last interviews, Max is unsuitable to video, except this little problem. Max has died, now he's back, and now they've got him bouncing on top of a trampoline. This is when it's getting very, very serious, and this is all in theory. We don't know what happened. This is, some individuals are saying this is a technique for when you've died and reanimated, you jump bouncing up on the trampoline to get your body more acquainted with being back in your body. That's all hocus pocus stuff. None of it is going to matter a hill of beans in a court of law. Right, those interviews, the Fourth Reich, Dulcie, these are actually still frames from the interviews in Poland. There were concerns about his death. I involved Kerry Cassidy, and then the Polish published their interviews. The basic, the briefing that I received was that basically various agencies wanted to get Max dead, take his essence out of body, and like a weapon system. Remember, these are people who've been trained in various techniques. Find out what ultimately Max was programmed as, what his targets were, then find out what the targets were, and if necessary, change the targets, then put him back into his body, reanimate him, and then you've got the goods for sale. Now, this is strictly my personal view. It is not legal, it's just speculation. It is purely speculation based on the information which we know at this time. It could be completely a load of baloney, it's got no standing legally, but it is my postulation. And that was based on a number of phone calls and a number of bits of information that Max had been poisoned with African snake adder venom, death adder venom, and African death scorpion venom. Then I got another phone call that would explain all the black stuff coming out of him was he'd been poisoned very crudely and simply with a form of rat poison, which you can get in Poland, that if you do take that, you will produce black blood. This stuff's on the floor in this very, very nice apartment, in Monica's very nice apartment. So why is this man who's vomiting this stuff not taken to a hospital? Something is very wrong here no matter which way you look at it, which is why with the interview with Kerry Cassidy, I flagged that this was a very serious cause for concern, that there is something very wrong with Max's death. Max also, 36 hours or 2 days before, by 2.5 days before he died, he told his mother, if I die, investigate. So here we now have a situation where Max knows he's in trouble, he can't get out of it, and he tells his mother, if I die, investigate. So that's a matter of public record. So then when he does die, excuse me, but maybe it's time to investigate. So I have worked very closely with Vanessa on this, who is his mother. We've had very detailed discussions, a lot of it on this idea that he was reanimated and he was basically going to be sold on. Ultimately, Max died a second time, did not wake up, and he's dead. There are pictures which are available where a blackness appears on his forehead, and the condition of the body when it returned to the United Kingdom was so bad that that Vanessa, the mother, did not want to identify it. It was his sister, who identified it, and it was very bad state indeed. As a consequence to this, I warned Vanessa that there would be two autopsies. There will be the one that you'll be told and the one that they'll really know about. The one you'll be told will show no results, that nothing's really happening here, and basically to move on. We know that Max took drugs, as all public record, and he was off the drugs. Monica was absolutely insistent on that. And if she had murdered Max, why would she say that? Because it would be in her interests that he was on drugs, so he simply died of a drug overdose. End of story. Now, there was a procedure described to me by individuals, which Sarah, the Friday of my 2016 conference was dedicated, the Friday after was dedicated to talking about Max. So Sarah went on stage, and she, by this time Sarah and I are not talking. There's no denying any of this. But this is information. We're going to be civilized. We're going to deal with it. Sarah obviously is not going to be happy having broken up with her boyfriend, that he's then maybe having relationships elsewhere. Obviously, that's a private thing. Of course, they're not going to be happy, slappy land here. Okay? But the point is that Sarah described on stage at the Basis Conference, and it's on record, she described a procedure extremely similar to the one that had been described to me by a bunch of individuals where Max's energies, his soul was taken out of the body, things were going to be done to him, and they were actually going to place Max's energy or soul in some kind of device which could then be used to maintain his capture and sell. Again, you cannot bring this up in court, but that is the basic postulation. It's a coincidence that Sarah should come up with a very similar process. And again, I remind you again, John Irwin, one step beyond the 16. So basically we have a British military asset, also US military asset, dies abroad in Warsaw, dodgy stuff seems to have happened, and the shit hits the fan in the newspapers. While we're talking about John Irwin, this is his book. Now the point about this is, that's essentially all I'm going to say about Max. He's a British military asset, another UFO related. It was published in the newspapers that he was another British ufologist dies. I'm adding quite a few names to this list. But just before I do that, John Irwin, the whole point of this is, we have a combination here of a number of things. First of all, John Irwin, you, a British military asset in a secret British military team fighting against the Predator, the New World Order, and active military service in the 1950s. So we have a secret British military team fighting an enemy that has taken over our government, taken over our society, and is taking us out. Now, this is a graphical representation by John Irwin of a data bank, 2 data banks that his team, that he was involved with in 1959, where they got these in lovely wooden boxes. This is thousands of years old of our technology from our past. And they got 2 of those things in 1959. There's a total of 9. They interlock. There are very subtle indentations along that. This is like a giant iPhone. It's about that size, about this size. And this contains data on interdimensional portals and control accessing off-world through interdimensional gates. Again, the term interdimensional is wrong. But by getting this, they got control of gates on this side, which has been taken away from us by the Predator. Just before the team went in, John Irwin is trained in lethal combat. He can kill you in about 30 seconds. Faster. Just like that. 2 flying saucers take off from the Syrian desert. This is the base where a Bilderberger type meeting was being held in the desert in 1959. That team went in there, wiped them out. You're only talking 12 max. They're called a 16 because you have 4 groups of 4.
Miles?
Yeah.
You'll be on 1 hour.
I'm on 1 hour.
Yeah, you're running over now.
Oh God. Okay, well that's his book. Another individual was also targeted at the time is Nina Valentine. Nina Valentine's grandfather is called Valentine, and he was part of instigating the MK Ultra program into the health service. Remember, we lost the war. The health service was created after the war. The Germans put that in, instigated it. The prick test the heel prick test, where they get the genetics of the mother and the baby. So we have an institutionalized MK Ultra situation in this country. Previous previous researchers on this who died are Graham Birdsall. I suspect he was murdered. Tony Dodd. Elements say he was murdered. Ron Adams, who I was one of the second people I interviewed. He was at Rendlesham, the Bentwaters base. He and his entire family were abducted at the Bentwaters base, which involved spiders, a terror of spiders. Ken Phillips told me days before, or weeks before he died, they were going to get him, and he looked shocking. These are prominent British ufologists who've been murdered. Subsequently, after me blowing the whistle on the questions about Max, I then took 3 potential assassination attempts involving details which I won't go into. I got phone calls. Simon Parks even published up on his website that I'd been poisoned. Nina Valentine's taken a hell of a hit. She's discussing a lot of this online. Dave Moncur took a shot in the neck. He's got an air rifle pellet in his neck that they can't operate on. This is Nina with her long hair there, and she outed Joanne, the former Amash project person, as being something, and that's all on record. We'll just go past all that. This is, again, David Monker, and this is the thing very finally in this stage. I've got a couple of things I've got to show you. These are these interdimensional insects. These crawl up onto your head. They're big, and that's what this thing about spiders is so important. This is more interdimensional insects. These things feed on information. They're not quite visible. You get about 2.5 seconds to see them. Now, a description of these things by possibly the late Chris Thomas. This is him in Wales. He mentioned about these giant spiders called scuttlers. And what he says they are man-made materials that are copied from ET sources or back engineered. They have the body and legs of these things made from a type of titanium. They're basically big things. They've got internal electronic components. These are big spiders. They feed on information. This is another example taken from a television company and the staff there, where their consciousness is being actively accessed by something which repeats the same pattern. Again, that's similar. So what the hell are these things? Flying saucers and things coming out of dimension. That's a ball, but it's similar to the kiss, the two lips, which is similar to a moth. Again, the smiley face, there's a lot of detail there, but that's an indication that the consciousness of individuals is being accessed at a thought level. There's other things there which we'll go past. Now, right, this is the latest information from a CE5 about a shoot down using CE5 technology in Carlisle in 1999. This is a traumatized contactee who said this very briefly, if I can play it. You going to play it?
Yeah.
Oh God. Play.
I had a council house at Cliff Road, just there, for about a year. The UFO crashed into the farmer's field in 1999, about there. And there's the farmhouse. And when I was at the front door in darkness, the coal merchant one, sort of pure chap.
Okay, the old Zeta spacecraft, okay, yeah.
Yeah, when I was at my front door at Sandyside, paying the coal merchant in darkness, I witnessed 2 Zeta spacecraft coming into land low, across there, towards Sandyside. This area here is where I used to walk home from Longtown from the shops. They offered me a job in the space field, so I refused. They've got garden shed merchants.
When you say space field, are you talking about space as in outer space?
Yeah.
Right, okay, and continue, yeah.
Well, you'll have to wait until that gets published on basis. That's in Carlisle, intentionally bringing in craft for the British military to shoot down, to reverse engineer and use in the secret space program. Right, this is stuff from Nazca, thanks to, I forget her name, oh Jesus. Anyway, no, it's not Paula Harris. Jesus Christ. No, it's the former secretary to Werner von Braun. Carol White. Now, she's given me this information, yes, and now you can see here immediately that you've got something there. You've got a head, big eyes. You've got digits, 3 digits. These are from Nazca. There's, again, because that's like that, that means there must be several of them, because it's not curled up fetal like that. That's what the limbs look like. This is an X-ray. And we'll have to see what that story reveals. And I think that's about it. Bases at the Barge will have Vanessa Bates. It's not based at the Barge, it's based at the Black Swan on the 22nd. Vanessa Bates, that's Max's mother, will be giving a presentation and the opportunity for a quiet social discussion with her. Jane Shattuck's the new speaker. Her mother, again, warned of a virus or some kind of process which kills all life on planets, and we're right on that problem right now. Christine Joanna Hart will be speaking, and David Monker will be speaking. And then the final big one from bases is Ireland Awakes, which is the 15th and 17th of September in Dublin, organised by a ground crew over in Ireland. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miles Johnston, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Now, don't go away, or you can. We'll take a little bit of breaks. It'll take. We'll take a little bit of breaks. It'll take a moment to set him up. But we have a little surprise for you. A mystery guest has been revealed. It's John Scarry. John, could you come on up, please? We're going to take a short break just while I set John up, and then he's going to give a very brief mini feature. It won't be a long it won't be a long talk, but he has some very interesting things he wants to say. Would you have like a have one of these, do you? Okay. So just 2 minutes, ladies and gentlemen.
Where's you living?